Good morning, everyone. Let us start our presentation on agriculture and energy. Is it visible? Okay.
Yeah, it is visible. It is visible.
Yeah, thank you. So, in the present scenario, agriculture and environment and the energy system, all three are closely related. Before going further on the talk, how energy is closely related with agriculture, let us go back to Paris Agreement, which is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. Its goal is to limit global warming well within 2 degrees Celsius, or we can say more precisely, not more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, as compared to pre-industrial era. Paris Agreement was adopted by 196 member countries in the 21st round of Conference of Parties meeting in Paris on 12th of December 2015. This agreement is also known as COP21. This treaty came into force on 4th November 2016 when half of the participating member countries ratified this treaty. Under this, the countries aim to achieve a climate neutral world by 2050. Okay. See, fossil fuel based energy system, which is mostly driven by coal and petroleum, came into existence with industrial revolution in late 18th century and early 19th century, where uncontrolled GHG emissions since then has been termed as the primary reason for the global temperature rise. As we all know that our global temperature is rising, but the uncontrolled GHG emissions due to burning of fossil fuels has been termed as the primary reason for this global temperature rise. Okay, so therefore every country submitted their plans for reducing GHG emissions and climate actions to build resilience to adapt to the impacts of temperature rise. This is known as nationally determined contributions. Sorry, this is known as nationally determined contributions. This NDC is legally binding. Okay, coming to India's NDC at Paris Agreement, India pledged to reduce its emission intensity by 33% to 35% of GDP by 2030 below 2005 levels. That means whatever the emission intensity India had at 2005 level, it will reduce it by 33 to 35%, and the year for the reduction mark is 2030. Okay, India pledged to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 gigaton through increasing forest and tree cover by 2030. And how India can achieve this additional cumulative carbon sink through biochar conversion of crop residue, we have already discussed. Also, India also pledged to increase share of non-fossil waste energy to 40% of installed electric power capacity by 2030. Okay, see, our talk is mostly revolving around this NDC only. Okay, see, in this diagram I have shown the energy or electricity production routes through biomass. Okay, Energy generation from biomass offers an encouraging solution to environment challenges by lowering GHG emissions. See what happens that we are using fossil fuels such as coal and petroleum to produce electricity and energy for our consumptions. This is considered as polluting. Why? Only because this fossil fuel takes millions of years to produce. Okay. However, we are burning it in few seconds only. And the carbon which was sequestrated in fossil fuels, which took millions of years, and it is released to the atmosphere immediately. However, if we burn biomass to produce electricity and for other energy consumptions, then that biomass is recycled in the next production cycle. Okay, such as if you say take the example of crop residue. Crop residue is produced in 2 cycles of every year, or you can say somewhere in 3 cycles also. Then whatever the CO2 released into the atmosphere because of the burning of crop residue is also absorbed in the next crop cycle. However, this is not in the case of fossil fuels, which is coal and petroleum. Okay. Several thermochemical and biochemical conversion technologies is present at the time, which could be disseminated in on a larger scale for electricity generation. Okay, these thermochemical conversion technologies include combustion, which is direct combustion. We can also say pyrolysis, gasification, and the other biochemical conversion technologies include anaerobic digestion and fermentation. See, these two, thermochemical conversion and biochemical conversion, have a basic difference on the treatment of biomass. In thermochemical conversion technologies, we treat biomass with heat in presence of air or in absence of air or in partial presence of air. Okay, and in the presence of air, combustion took place, and in partial presence of air, gasification takes place, and in the absence of air, pyrolysis of biomass takes place. However, in biochemical conversion technology, biomass is treated with some microbes, and the microbial activities converted into the usable form of fuel, such as anaerobic digestion converts biomass into biogas, and fermentation produces ethanol. Okay. In direct combustion, biomass is oxidized with abundance of air, generally producing heat, which produces steam in turn, and this steam is utilized to run turbines to produce electricity. Okay, that means the heat which is produced through combustion of biomass is utilized to produce electricity with steam turbines. Okay. However, in gasification, biomass is converted to gas in partial presence of air, or you can say partial presence of oxygen. This gas is of medium to low calorific value, and the gas which is produced is also known as syngas, is then used as fuel in combined cycle of electricity generation plants, which is also known as CHP. Okay, being produced in combined cycle power plants, electricity generation from this technology has higher efficiency and is more competitive than steam turbine. That means from direct combustion of biomass. Okay, about 40% electrical conversion efficiency could be achieved at a scale of 30 megawatt electricity power plant through gasification technology. Now coming to pyrolysis, which is also our main topic for today's discussion. Biomass pyrolysis produces biochar, pyrolysis gas, and biooil as main product, which could be utilized for co-firing in combined heat and power cycle. Also, organic biomass is converted into biogas through anaerobic digestion process, and which is also have a prospect to be used in combined heat and power cycle to produce electricity. Okay, ethanol is produced through fermentation of sugar crops such as sugar beet and sugar cane, and starch crops such as wheat and maize. Okay, and this ethanol is also utilized for electricity production in CHP. Ethanol based energy system has been prominently used in Brazil, where it constitutes about 95% of electricity supply. Okay. Now coming to the pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is an economical and most effective thermochemical conversion technology. Okay, it is because of huge ease of operation and productivity. Pyrolysis has been highly favored technology to produce biochar since ancient time. In the first figure, or you can say this figure, I have shown the traditional way to produce biochar. Okay, in the traditional biochar production from earth brick kilns, this directly releases gases into the atmosphere, which you can say is polluting in nature. Okay, however, modern pyrolysis technologies use this gas for the process heating, and this improves the efficiency of the production. Okay. Yeah. Now coming to the product yield of the pyrolysis process. See, biochar is our main focus. Okay. Biochar, this is also known as biocoal or biocharcoal. This biochar is carbon-rich solid material produced by thermochemical conversion technology, such as gasification, pyrolysis, torrefaction, and carbonization. But we will mostly focus on pyrolysis only in this talk. However, I would like to elaborate more on gasification. Okay, in gasification, biomass is subjected to partial oxidation in the temperature range of 700 degrees Celsius to 900 degrees Celsius, and it produces gaseous fuel, which is about 85% of syngas, and biochar is produced about 10%, and 5% is bioil in the gasification process. Okay. However, carbonization encompasses biomass short duration heat treatment at high pressure at temperature 300 degrees Celsius to 650 degrees Celsius. Biochar and syngas are two main products of this carbonization process. Carbonization of wet biomass is known as hydrothermal carbonization. And now coming to pyrolysis. Yeah, heat treatment of biomass in sense oxygen, or you can say in inert atmosphere, in the temperature range of 300 degrees Celsius to 900 degrees Celsius is known as pyrolysis. Okay. During pyrolysis, thermochemical disintegration of biomass constituents happen. Biomass have three constituents: lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose. During pyrolysis process, these three constituents disintegrates into gases, vapors, and biochar. Okay. I have also mentioned about torrefaction. Torrefaction is considered as low temperature biomass pyrolysis, and torrefaction happen in the range of 200 degrees Celsius to 300 degrees Celsius. Okay. Torrefaction is also considered heat pre-treatment of biomass to improve the uh, pyrolysis process efficiency and product quality. And how it is done, we will discuss later. Okay. We will come to this slide. Now going forward, coming to the factors affecting the pyrolysis process yield. There are various factors which affect the pyrolysis process yield, which is pyrolysis temperature, heating rate, residence time, carrier gas flow, reactor pressure, biomass type, and biomass particle size. However, this heating rate is the most important, and pyrolysis temperature. These two factors impact the pyrolysis yield most. Okay. Theoretically, every carbonic material is suitable for biochar production. Crop residues, municipal solid waste, sewage sludge, algal biomass, forest residue, kitchen waste, and even animal litters has been used to produce biochar. However, biochar yield and its physiochemical properties is profoundly subjected to biomass constituents, which is lignin, hemicellulose, and cellulose, inorganic substances, and moisture content in biomass. Thermal breakdown of lignin, hemicellulose, and cellulose takes place in the different temperature zones. As I have mentioned earlier, hemicellulose decomposes in the temperature range of 200 degrees Celsius to 600 degrees Celsius. Cellulose decomposes in the temperature range of 240 degrees Celsius to 350 degrees Celsius, and lignin decomposes in the temperature range of 280 degrees Celsius to 350 degrees Celsius, respectively. Both lignin and cellulose contribute to the biochar yield, and cellulose and hemicellulose contribute to the bio-oil yield. Okay. Lignin components provide a stable yield, that is biochar. It might be because lignin is thermally more stable. Okay. However, weak bonds in lignin result in more consolidated solid form of biochar, as the large chain of lignin break into small constituents, and this gives a higher density of biochar, or you can say biochar in a more compact form. Also, one thing is to mention is that biochar yield decreases with moisture content. So 5 to 20% of moisture component is recommended for pyrolysis process. If biomass have more than you say 20% moisture content, then it is recommended for the pre-treatment, or you can say heat pre-treatment. Okay. Biomass with higher moisture content reduces heating rate, and it requires more energy and time to achieve the pyrolysis temperature. I have earlier mentioned that pyrolysis temperature is achieved around 280 to 350 degrees Celsius. Therefore, more than 30% moisture content component in biochar makes it unfit for biochar product. Biomass makes it unfit for biochar production. Okay. Therefore, biomass with lower moisture is preferred for biochar production. Also, biomass particle size has a significant impact on biochar yield. Okay. See, biomass is a bad conductor of heat and possesses a limited rate of heat transfer and thermal efficiency. Large particle size of biomass shows a steep temperature gradient within biomass particle. See, if say this is the size of biomass particle which is subjected to pyrolysis, and there is a small size of biomass particle which is subjected to the pyrolysis process. The larger size biomass will have a steep temperature gradient. That means the temperature at the surface will be much higher than the temperature at the core. However, in the small size biomass, temperature at the surface will be not that much greater from the core, which is in the case of large particle size biomass. Okay, the large particle size biomass causes the lower average particle temperature, which favors also the higher biochar yield. The vapor produced due to thermal cracking has to travel more distance inside biomass. Okay, see, if vapor is produced in this region of biomass particle, this has to travel this much inside biomass to get outside and released into the exhaust of the pyrolysis reactor, and this is later collected outside of the pyrolysis reactor. However, in the small particle biomass, this vapor produced inside biomass has to travel lower distance as compared to the higher particle size biomass. Okay. Therefore, smaller particle size of biomass allows uniform heating and releases more volatile matter, leading to the higher yield of bio-oil and pyrolysis gas. Therefore, relatively higher particle size of biomass is preferred for pyrolysis process. Okay. Now coming to the pyrolysis temperature and heating rate. For this, I have to go to the previous slide. See, pyrolysis temperature is a highly critical parameter for biochar yield and its properties. Biochar yield decreases with an increase in processing temperature, or you can say as the temperature increases, the thermal cracking of the biomass constituents took place at a rapid pace. Okay, and after certain temperature, the thermal cracking stops, or you can say reduces, and biochar is produced in that zone only. I want to show one. Yeah, this is a graph which looks like the sorry. Yeah. Yeah, this is the graph of mass loss rate versus temperature of a typical biomass. Okay, this is mass loss rate and this is temperature. Okay, you can see three peaks here. One, this is the second one, and this is the third one. This peak denotes the mass loss rate due to moisture. Okay, the more moisture content in biomass, the higher will be this peak. Okay, and this peak combinedly constitutes the thermal degradation of hemicellulose and cellulose. In some biomass, depending upon the percentage, there is also a small peak here denoting the thermal degradation of hemicellulose, and this is for the cellulose, and this peak is for lignin. As I have mentioned earlier, that the more lignin content in biomass, the higher will be its productivity. Okay. Yeah, we were talking about the pyrolysis temperature. Yeah, biochar yield decreases with increase in pyrolysis temperature? It is because energy supplied to biomass at a higher temperature favors the release of volatile constituents. Also, the thermal breakdown of large hydrocarbons in hemicellulose and cellulose of biomass at higher temperature lead to increased liquid and gaseous yield and a declining biochar yield. Yeah, I have already mentioned that if the hemicellulose and cellulose consistent is higher in the biomass, then biochar yield will be less because hemicellulose and cellulose constituents uh, thermally break down and it constitute to the biochar yield and pyrolysis gas yield. Okay, which is not favorable for the biochar yield, higher biochar yield. Okay. However, as content in biochar, its pH, specific area, and water holding capacity increase with temperature. Biochar conversion at lower temperature would require less energy. It would subsequently incur less carbon footprint of biochar production due to fuel consumption or due to lower fuel consumption. See, if we produce biochar at lower temperature, then it will be consuming less electricity. Okay, and the lower is the electricity consumed during biochar production, lower it will have a lower carbon footprint. Okay. Now, pyrolysis process is classified as fast pyrolysis, or you can say flash pyrolysis, slow pyrolysis, and intermediate pyrolysis depending upon the heating rate. Okay. Heating rate and heating rate also impact the biochar yield to a certain extent. Higher heating rate and a higher processing temperature are associated with higher bio yield and pyrolysis gas production, whereas higher biochar yield is obtained at low heating rate and lower processing temperature. You can see here is heating rate for the slow pyrolysis is 2 to 15 degrees Celsius per minute and has biochar yield about 25 to 45% depending upon the biomass. However, the high heating rate, that is more than 50 degrees Celsius per minute, is termed as intermediate pyrolysis, and it has lower biochar yield up to 30% only. However, in the flash pyrolysis, the heating rate is very high and it is about more than 300 degrees Celsius, and the bio oil yield is maximum, which is up to 70%. Okay. High biochar yield at low heating rate is associated with negligible thermal cracking of biomass and fewer possibility of secondary pyrolysis reaction. See, slow pyrolysis, that means low heating rate, will be allowing biomass for uniform heating, and there will be a secondary pyrolysis reaction also. However, in fast pyrolysis, there will be very less time for secondary pyrolysis reaction. Okay. However, processing temperature and heating rate also affect the morphological characteristics of biochar, such as pore development, pore size, and surface area to a large extent, which is a very crucial parameter for biochar when it is used for the carbon sequestration process, and when it is applied in soil for soil amendment and improving the agriculture productivity. We have already discussed these parameters, so I'm not going in detail. Yeah, slow heating rate and lower processing temperature are preferred for biochar production. Biochar yield depends on both vapor and solid residence time. And here I have mentioned only solid residence time. For slow pyrolysis, solid residence time is more than 20 minutes. Okay. And for the immediate intermediate pyrolysis, the solid residence time is much less, or about 10 minutes only. But for the flash pyrolysis, the solid residence time is in few seconds. See, longer solid residence time provides sufficient time for the repolymerization of biomass constituents. About 30 minutes to a few hours of solid residence time has been recommended for achieving optimum biochar yield through pyrolysis process. One more thing is that carrier gas. Carrier gas is also an important parameter for uh, pyrolysis process. Okay, carrier gases provide a passive atmosphere for biomass pyrolysis, and purging of uh, carrier gases uh, help to remove vapor produced during the pyrolysis. Purging out the pyrolysis vapor is very crucial to restrict any secondary reactions altering the composition and nature of biochar, biooil, and gas. Nitrogen is the most widely used carrier gas because of its inertness and abundance availability. See, in the atmosphere, about 78% is nitrogen. Okay, so it is very abundant in the nature and in the atmosphere. So it is very easy to capture nitrogen and used in the pyrolysis process to provide inert atmosphere. Other carrier gases such as argon, helium, water vapor has also been used for purging pyrolysis vapor. But see, argon, helium are very expensive and very less abundance in the nature, so it is not preferred. Coming to the impact of carrier gas flow on the pyrolysis yield, the study shows that there is a small drop in biochar yield when gas carrier gas flow rate is increased. It might be because of higher flow rate of carrier gas flushes out the pyrolysis vapor immediately, and which does not uh, allow the repolymerization of biomass or sorry, biochar during the pyrolysis process. Pressure inside the reactor also plays a critical role in pyrolysis product yield. The high pressure increases the vapor residence time, leading to the disintegration of organic matter of vapor to form a secondary carbon, and this secondary carbon gets deposited on the biochar surface, and a repolymerization reaction takes place, resulting into the increase in biochar yield. Also, carbon deposition on biochar surface at higher pressure increases its energy density, and which makes it superior solid fuel for electricity production and other energy usage. Thus, we can say that high pressure favors the biochar yield and enhances the carbon content in biochar. Okay, now we will go to the techno-economic aspect of biochar production. See, there are various aspects of any technologies which is need to be taken care of while going to a larger scale, and this assessment is done through techno-economic aspect. Okay, and what are the environmental impacts of any process, production process? It is done through environmental impact assessment and life cycle assessment. Okay. Yeah. Before going further, we will do a techno-economic assessment of biochar production, and the capacity of this pyrolysis unit is 0.5 metric ton per hour. See, the reactor type, plant construction period, cost and economic life, operational cost, energy consumption, and biochar economic value are essential parameters to assess the techno-economic viability of crop residue-based biochar system. Okay. See, there are various components for setting up a plant for pyrolysis of biomass and crop residue. There are various equipments required for setting up this plant. First one is pyrolysis reactor setup, and the capacity of this pyrolysis reactor setup is 5 metric ton per hour. That means 0.5 metric ton per hour. That means about half ton is the feedstock for this pyrolysis reactor, and this cost about 340,000 US dollar, and with this has an economic life of about 10 years. Okay, and as I have also mentioned that crop residue and several biomass have higher moisture content, so it requires process preheating. Okay, then through preheating, the moisture of the biomass and crop residue is reduced, and for preheating, a dryer can be used. Okay, and this dryer cost about 45,000 USD, and with an economic life of 25 years. Also, a 20 kilowatt generator set is required, and which cost about $2,500, and which has an economic life of about 18 years. Also, tractor and loader is required to transport the biomass and crop residue. So in this calculation, about 22.4 horsepower tractor is considered, and it cost about 15,000 US dollar with an economic life of 10 years. Additional some machinery is also used, which cost about 294,000 US dollar with a life of 10 years. That means these are the equipments which is required for the for setting up a pyrolysis plant. And there are certain capital expenditure is also associated with setting up pyrolysis plant. These capital expenditure include office area and building, and roughly construction of an office area for running a pyrolysis plant cost about 471,000 USD, and the whole building cost about $3,538,000 US with an economic life of 10 years. These are considered as per the standards procedure adopted by US Environment Protection Agency. That means US EPA. Okay, and all the calculation has been presented to you, has been done on these guidelines only. There are also certain operational costs associated with the setting up pyrolysis plant. Operational cost includes the cost of feedstock. Feedstock cost about 0.014 USD per ton, or you can say per metric ton. And the pyrolysis plant also requires certain repair and maintenance every year. So it is about 19,246 USD per year will be spent on the maintenance and repair on the of the pyrolysis setup. Also, there will be some consumables during this course, which is modeled at a value of 1,785 USD. Okay, there will be also certain labor cost involving the material handling, transportation, etc., and which cost about 1,81,841 USD per year. Okay. Also, the packaging of biochar and would cost about $124 per million ton, and transportation of biochar would incur about 52 USD per million ton. Insurance, and also there will be some miscellaneous expenses, which is for 1 year, or you can say 2,000 of working hour in 1 year, and which is about 11,100 USD. So in this way, we can say that for a whole year of operation, or you can say running a pyrolysis plant, about feedstock cost about 10 to 13% of the total cost of running a pyrolysis plant. Okay, and labor cost about 23 to 28%, and initial capital investment required 16 to 30%. And initial capital investment, feedstock cost and labor cost are the most important, or you can say significant economic factors influencing the selling of biochar in the market. That means whatever the biochar is produced in this plant have to be monetized or sold into the market, and the components which are impacting highest, or you can say have the highest impact of in the running cost of a pyrolysis plant, will having the highest impact in the cost of biochar which will be sold into the market. Okay, and for another example, about see, the pyrolysis setup cost also depends upon the type of reactor. For example, I would like to mention that about $17 million USD is required to set up 3 ton per hour Rotary kiln reactor, and about 21 million USD is required to set up a 3 ton per hour microwave reactor. Okay. However, this is the cost for one installation only. So if there are multiple installations, certainly there will be a cost cutting or cost reduction, and it is from 30% to 50%. Okay, that means if there are multiple installation, then the total cost would go down up to 50%. That which is half of the present initial cost. And with this calculation, it was found that least selling price of biochar for various feedstock could be from 573 to 1000 USD per ton in the conventional setup, and from 660 USD to 1100 USD in microwave setup, which is significantly lower than the conventional fuel cost, which is coal. Okay, electricity generation at 20 megawatt plant, and the electricity cost would be about 0.1 USD per kilowatt hour, and this could further decrease up to 0.08 USD per kilowatt hour, assuming a 50% reduction in capital investment after 20 installation of the 20 megawatt power plant. Okay, that means if we are utilizing biochar for electricity generation, these are the electricity cost to the consumer, that means which is very less as compared to the electricity produced from coal and other fossil fuels. Yeah, these were the economic and technical aspects of the biochar production and its utilization for electricity generation. Now coming to the environmental aspect of biochar production. See, it has been well established that crop residues biochar system could mitigate global warming. Till this point, we have this clear-cut idea. That means biochar could replace coal in thermal power plants, or even if not completely replace, it could be a part of co-firing with coal. And several government have mandated different levels of biochar co-firing with coal, such as government of India have mandated up to 20% co-firing of biochar with coal. Okay. Yeah. However, it is essential to estimate the environmental footprint of biochar production to draw a conclusion. See, though there is a economic aspect and a technical aspect is achieved for the biochar production and its utilization for electricity generation, but we can never ever conclude without giving it a green certificate, or you can say the without assessing its environmental impact. Otherwise, what will happen that the similar thing what has happened with the coal. Initially, coal was used for the electricity generation, and other petroleum products are also used for energy needs, but there was environmental cascading effects. Okay. So it is essential to establish environmental footprint of biochar production and its electricity generation to draw any conclusion. Environmental performance of crop residue pyrolysis is in this way very critical for long-term sustainability of crop residue biochar system. Okay. There are various aspects which requires additional energy during the pyrolysis of biomass. pre-processing of crop residues such as chopping and drying, transportation, storage, handling, and biochar production require significant amount of heat and energy. Freshly obtained crop residue contain about 11 to 30% moisture. So there are processes to reduce this moisture, but there should be also economic aspect associated with these processes, such as you can say sun drying and solar drying. Sun drying and solar drying are the most widely used processes for drying or preheat treatment of biomass, and it is also considered as eco-friendly. One another form could be adopted for preheating of biomass, and which will be making the pyrolysis process more efficient. That is uh, capturing the pyrolysis gas and utilizing it for the preheating. Okay, preheat treatment using this waste heat, which will improve the energy efficiency and reduce the environmental footprint of the pyrolysis process. Biochar conversion of biomass through enhanced or you can say efficient pyrolysis reactor will be having the less environmental impact in this regard. Okay, it was calculated that biochar conversion of 2,300 million tons of feedstock would result into 1,000 kg CO2 equivalent GHG, 1,000 kg CO2 equivalent per ton even GHG avoidance per year. And in this way, about 800 kg CO2 carbon credit on 1 ton of dry biomass pyrolysis could be earned every year. That means about 2,300 into 800 million tons of CO2 equivalent GHG emission avoidance could be achieved, and this is a huge amount. Okay, or you can say, just let me put a number into this. It comes around 1840 gigaton CO2 equivalent. This is a huge number, which could be achieved through electricity generation from biochar conversion of 2,300 million tons of biomass. Okay, we will return to all these calculations at the later stage. Now, see, coming to the case study on India. Till this point, whatever I have talked in the global perspective, and just want to give you a number so that you can understand the how much potential biochar could carry in the energy system. Okay, in India, year-round crop cultivation is done, and India is the second largest agro-based economy in the world. It generates about 500 to 550 million tons of crop residue every year. And in these, sugarcane constitutes the highest amount of crop residue, which is about 27% of total crop residue production, followed by rice, 23%, wheat 22%, other coarse cereals is 14%, oil seeds 6%, pulses 5%, cotton 2%, and other fibers 1%. Okay, and these crop residue have a biochar capacity of about 200 million tons every year. Okay, and rice has the largest share. Followed by wheat, coarse sugarcane, coarse cereals, pulses, cotton, oilseeds, and other fibers. Here, it is worth mentioning that despite sugarcane having highest amount of crop residue, it has the third largest share in biochar production. It is because crop residue obtained from sugarcane cultivation, which is bagasse and sugarcane top and leaves, have a high volatile content in it. Okay, and at this point, you might have a question that, see, crop residue could be directly feed into electricity production system and used for the co-firing, and it could produce electricity. Then why we are subjecting it to the pyrolysis and then utilizing for the co-firing? Yeah, it is only because crop residue co-firing have numerous disadvantages. In the terms of it is hydrophilic in nature, it has very low bulk density, it also has high moisture content, which causes inefficient burning during co-firing, and inefficient burning could lead to slagging and falling glitches on heated surface, and which could lead to the ash deposition inside the furnace. These problems could be mitigated by the pre-treatment or conversion of biomass and crop residue through torrefaction, pyrolysis, and gasification. And as we have discussed that pyrolysis seems to be the most efficient process to produce biochar, and which could be utilized for the co-firing in thermal power plants. Okay, I hope I am able to clarify this doubt. See, it was also estimated that biochar co-firing is economical, and it could reduce 18 to 40% of CO2 emission by coal-fired power plants. In India, about 16, more than 60% of total GHG emission come from the thermal power plants and energy sector, and about 40% of CO2 or equivalent GHG emissions could be achieved. That means this is a huge number in context of India. Yeah. Now coming to the electricity generation potential from biochar in India, about 1400 terawatt of electricity was consumed during 2019 to 2020 in India. However, crop residue derived biochar possesses about 500 terawatt of electricity generation potential per year. That means about 40% of total electricity consumption in India could be derived from biochar co-firing in power plants. And about, you can see that this is in line with the third nationally determined contribution pledged by India at Paris Agreement. Okay, about 40% installed capacity should be from non-fossil based energy sources. That means up to this only could be achieved from biochar conversion. Okay, and the other renewable energy sources such as solar, hydrothermal, wind are other renewable energy sources which could be utilized, and a great carbon neutrality can be achieved in India. Okay. So in this we can conclude that electricity generation from biochar has a huge potential to achieve carbon neutrality in the electricity sector, and reducing GHG emission and attaining NDC targets by 2030. Now I will link crop residue biochar system with sustainable development goals, which is most important aspect to declare it is in line with the declare crop residue biochar system, that it is in line with environment protection goals, which is done at Paris Agreement. Okay, this picture tree shows how biochar derived from crop residue have linkages with various sustainable development goals. Okay. See, sustainable development goal attainment is essential for the sustainable socio-economic development of human civilization. It is pivotal for reverting ongoing global warming and climate change. As we know that sustainable development goals provide a framework for economic growth and sustainable use of natural resources such as air, water, arable land, raw materials, and social capitals in the form of human resources also. These sustainable development goals were adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 2015, and there are 17 goals and 169 targets, which are of contemporary political, socio-economic, and environmental importance. As we can see in this uh, tree diagram, crop residue biochar system could help to achieve multiple sustainable development goals. Okay. Biochar conversion could reduce GHG emission and other pollutant emission due to in situ burning of crop residue. So, reducing GHG emission is a part of climate action, which is goal 13. And carbon sequestration in soil in the form of biochar could be achieved. That means this is a carbon capture part. Okay. Biochar production through pyrolysis is considered as an energy efficient and cost effective technique. As we have seen, byproducts such as bio-oil and pyrolysis gas could be captured and utilized for process heating in modern pyrolysis systems, and it could reduce the environmental footprint of biochar production process. The biochar conversion is a part of, then we can say, is a part of responsible production and consumption, which is goal number 12. We can see here responsible production and consumption, which is SDG 12, and this marks the conversion of crop residue, which is a waste, to a wealth, which is which is in the form of biochar. So we can achieve this sustainable development goal 12. Biochar is also very effective for heavy metal absorption and contamination removal from soil and water. Thus, biochar has also prospect of providing clean water and sanitation, which is goal 6 of SDG. Okay. It can also in turn promote good health and well-being, which is goal 3 of sustainable development goal, which is under the umbrella of pollution control. And in this way, it could enrich life on land and below water, which is goal number 14 and 15. Okay. Biochar could improve soil health and productivity, as we have discussed earlier, when it is applied for the soil amendment, and it could lead to enhanced crop yield. Okay, it is also becomes the part of food security and zero hunger, which is goal 2 of sustainable development goal. Okay, here soil biochar could enhance the soil health and crop yield, and improve the agriculture productivity, which could help eradicating the hunger from the world. Okay, and you can say achieving the zero hunger goal of SDG. And as agriculture productivity increases, it could also help into elevating the poverty, which is goal number 1 of sustainable development goals. Okay. This could also promote the good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, applying biochar into soil for improving soil health and crop yield could also become a part of responsible production and consumption system, and which could see improving soil health could also enhance life on land, which is goal number 15. There are also various socioeconomic impact of biochar application, or you can say biochar system, in the form of elevating poverty, good health, promoting good health and well-being, and this could also provide decent work and economic growth for everyone, and reducing inequality, which is goal number 10. Okay, biochar could be an alternative fuel to the existing coal-based power generation systems, as we have discussed in this talk, and it can produce affordable and clean energy, which is goal number 7 of SDG. That means this become a part of energy production and storage. Okay, and biochar conversion of crop residue and biomass thus becomes a part of climate action, which is goal number 13, and also required under Paris Agreement. Biochar as a clean cooking fuel also is in line with SDG 7, which proposes to ensure access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy and provide clean cooking fuel to all households by 2030. See, SDG 7 also include providing clean cooking fuel to all household by 2030. And biochar could also be utilized as a clean cooking fuel, so it also becomes in line with this agenda of sustainable development goals. Biochar applications as biogas applications in biogas enrichment and storage system, and modern scientific technologies such as fuel cells, carbon nanotube production, and this could uh, assist in accomplishing goal number 9, which is uh, industry innovation and infrastructure development under sustainable development goal. Okay. Thus, biochar also have applications in the area of cosmetic, pharmaceuticals, chemical, and textile industries, and this could also promote a decent work and economic growth, which is goal number 8. Okay, this is goal number 8. Thus, we have seen that biochar conversion of crop residue through thermochemical route have impacts and positive impact on the environment, and multiple sustainable development goals could be achieved through this crop residue biochar system. And now this is the end of my talk. If you have any question, you can please ask. Is there any question from any participants? Yeah, there is one question. I'm reading out the question. From different purpose of biochar, how we can relate soil type and amount we can apply to have optimum soil health and uh, enhance crop yield. Yeah, this is a good question, and I hope I have answered this in the earlier talk when I have talked about the carbon sequestration in soil. I'm going to repeat that again. See, about 5 to 20 ton biochar per hectare application has been recommended. Okay, biochar application in soil have though have a positive impact, but there should be a careful use in the terms of as we apply biochar in the soil, it loosen up the soil. If there is a high amount of biochar, so the soil will be prone to erosion by wind and water. Okay, so if you say the soil is sandy, then you have to apply lower amount of biochar. That means about 5 ton per hectare. And if it is clayey soil, then the higher amount of biochar could be applied. That means up to 20 hectare per 20 ton per hectare. Sorry. However, the exact amount for each type of soil has yet to be optimized, and we don't have that much detailed data about each and every soil type. Any other question?
What about the relationship composition? I mean, chemical composition of the soil and this biochar.
Yeah, biochar is basic in nature, and sorry, it's also depends on the type of soil in which it is being applied. See, biochar have a different functional group such as alcohol, acid, and depending upon the prominence of these functional group, the nature of biochar is decided. That means the biochar will be basic or acidic. Then if biochar is acidic, then it will be most effective in the soil which is basic in nature. And if biochar is acidic in nature, then it will be applied for in soil which is sorry, I need to repeat it. If the biochar is basic in nature, then it should be applied in the soil which is acidic in nature, and vice versa. Any other question? Yeah. One more thing I would like to mention is that the type of biochar, that means the basic or acidic nature, could be controlled through activation process. Okay, that means if biochar is activated through base such as NaOH, KOH, then it will become basic in nature, and other activation, acid base activation would convert it into acidic in nature. Any other question? Any other question from participants? You can ask here, or you can simply type in chat box. I will answer from there. No question. Okay, then that's the end of this talk, and the next talk will be at 2 p.m. India time, which is about 1 hour 10 minutes from now. So let's have a break, and we will start at 2 p.m. or you can say 1 hour 10 minutes later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.